Welcome to my channel. This is not a Regex tutorial, but the problem I'll be solving needs a lot of skills around how to form a Regex pattern. I'll be showing you bits and pieces, but the full tutorial on Regex is something I'll be doing later. For now, let's jump into this problem. Like always, I've got my Hackerrank platform on the left-hand side and a Jupyter Lab on the right-hand side, which will help me show you how I get to the solution to this problem. Today's problem is detect floating point number. I've already opened it in a new tab, and I'm going to run you through what the task is. You're given a string n. Your task is to verify that n is a floating point number. If you don't know what a floating point number is, I can show it very quickly that this, or this, or this, all the three are floating point numbers. But also, this is a floating point number. This is a floating point number. As long as you've got a floating point in the number, that will be considered a floating point number. Let me clean those. We don't really need that. We'll come back to those. But your task is to get a valid float number that has the following requirements. Number one, it can start with a positive or a negative or a dot symbol. So if it starts with 0.30 or negative 3.2 or just 0.23, it's okay. It is accepted. So you can see that this is accepted, 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 but negative plus is not accepted. You have to find a way to filter that out. Also, the number must contain at least one decimal value. So 12 point, it's not a floating point number, but 12.0, it is a floating point number. And number must have exactly one floating point symbol. So if it is something like this, dot dot 23, it is not a floating point number. So we need to filter them out. Also, the number must not give any exceptions when converted using float of an n. So let me make it easy. If I do a float of 3.0, I will get 3.0. But if I do double points 43, it will throw an error and it will say, hey, you can't have point. You can only have 1 point. So that's another condition. Let me get rid of those. Back to the problem. The input format, the first line contains an integer t, which is the number of test cases. Does the user want to ask me 10 different questions or 5 or 1? That's the first number I will be receiving. In this very example, the user wants to ask me 4 different test cases. The next t lines, which in this case will be 4 lines, are the actual test cases. So test case number 1 is 4.000. I can see that. That's a very sneaky letter O instead of number 0. I'm expecting a false for that. Negative 1.00, positive 4.54, and some random stuff. Some random stuff is not a floating point number. I am expecting to see a false. The way I will solve this problem is by starting to import the RE library. RE is the regular expression operations library in Python. If you search for it, there is so much information out there, but all you need to do is to be able to import it. Once I import that, I will teach you the first step on how to check if some specific format exist inside a text or a string. You might be asked to find emails within a larger text. Maybe your boss asks you to find any email format in 1 million pages. How do you find emails? Well, normally with an @ sign, and before @ sign, you need some numbers and some letters. And after @ sign, you normally need also letters and numbers, and then .com or .something. You, as a human, will know how to find them using your eyes, but how do you teach your computer to do that for you? We normally use the match function from the Regex library. Normally, we teach the computer to understand a pattern, and that pattern is exactly what I talked about. Some letters and numbers at some letters and numbers.com, something like that. And then the next piece of information is actually the text, your PDF file, your Word file. So you're saying, hey, computer, look at my pattern and find it in this S or in this text. That's it. Then the match function says, yes, 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 found it, or did not find it. Let me give you a very quick example. I'll come back to this. If the pattern I'm looking for is For example, the word hi, which I start with that hat sign and the word hi, and I close it with a dollar sign. I'll come back to that. The text I'm looking for is this. It will say, hey, it's a match object to make it a Boolean, and it says true. What I just said is, don't give me the match object. Tell me if it is true or false. And it says, yes, I can see the word hi inside this text. So let me come back to this pattern. Let me call that pattern again. And I will drop this a line and I will change this to being pattern. The way you construct a pattern is open quotation marks. You can do singles or doubles, doesn't matter. You open with a hat and then you close with a dollar sign. The hat is the opening, that little thingy, and the dollar sign is the closing. Everything in between is what you are looking for. So if I'm looking for the word hi, that's how I do it. If I run this again, I will get true. If I make this capital H and run that again, it says, no, sorry, I can't see any highs with capital H inside this text. Let me revert this back to small h and keep it true because we love a positive answer. But now let me run you through a number of warm-up examples if you like, because that will help you to understand how do we find the floating point numbers. But before I do that, let me just remind you that it is good practice to put a letter R before your pattern. It's not going to really make any difference in what you see, but this allows Python to understand that this is a regular expression. Now I'll move on to talking about the plus sign because it is very important. Let me draft this for you. All right, I've pasted my examples into my Jupyter notebook and I have commented what the expected outcome is. What you really need to remember is that the plus sign looks for one or more occurrences of the preceding character. The preceding character here is A. Show me any piece of string that has at least one or more letter A's. So in this very example, would you think the first one should be a true? I think it should be a true because there are 3 A's one after the other. Also, this one should be a true because there is one A character right there. But I would think this last one should be a false because it has 0 A's and the plus sign does not allow for 0 occurrences. It always says 1 or more. Let me run this. If I run that, you will see that the expectation is pretty much true. It's true, true, false. However, if I change this from the plus sign into a star sign, this last one will also be true because the star sign or the asterisk says 0 or more. So it is happy with 0 occurrences as well. Let me run that and you will see that this will become true, 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 which is not surprising now. And now the last one is the question mark. Question mark makes it optional. It says 0 or 1. I don't really care. It is pretty much the opposite of the plus sign. So if I am saying a question mark, this one will be true because it does find an A. It will also be true for this one because it does find an A. And it will also be true for this one because it says it's optional if you have it or not. Let me run that. I should get 3 trues. And that was correct. I'll quickly put them together. So this one was the star. Inside the star, I'm going to get true, true, true. And if I put this for also the positive sign, this last one will be false. So I'll be getting true, true, false, and then all trues. There is only one false. So I hope this kind of makes sense. The plus is 1 or more. The star is 0 or more. And this one, the question mark, is just optional. If you like, put it there. If you don't like it, don't put it there, which will be very important when we go back to our problem. Now, the next step from here is you might ask, how do I find numbers or letters? Well, I'm just going to paste the same thing here. I'm going to come back to this pattern later. And I will reduce this to only 1 line. Okay, I don't want that anymore. As I showed in my previous example, start your string with a hat sign and close it with a dollar sign. That's what we do, but I'm not going to do it right now. For now, I'm just focusing on how to create a regex. Let me go back. I want to be able to find any letters, right? When I said any, I can easily open square brackets and close them. because I want to give it a bigger range, bigger number of options. So if I say, hey, run from A to Z and search if it does match, it says, yes, yes, it does match. If I change it from AAA to BDF, it still says, yep, yep, you've got it. Still, there are some letters there between A and Z. That's exactly what I'm asking. If I put a plus sign, because plus sign means one or more, let's run that. It says, yep, yeah, there is one or more of those. If I make this a star sign, it still says, yep, there is 0 or more. And if I make that optional, it still says true, because yeah, you can leave them there or you can just get rid of them. I'll still say true, no problems with that. So the construct is coming together, but the question is, if it is for letters, is there a pattern for numbers? Can I go between 0 to 9? And it will say, yeah, you can go between 0 to 9, but because you have set optional, I will still say true, because you don't have to have 0 to 9 here. But am I going to get true if I put a plus sign, which means one or more? I was expecting to see false. This one says you must have a number there, and I don't have any number there. So I was expecting false. I got a false. But if I make this a star sign, well, with a star sign, you're saying 0 or more. Well, it's okay. You can have no numbers and I will not be angry. I'll tell you true. All right, so I've got 0s to 9s. And now with a floating point number, I think you can see where I'm headed at. I'm headed into constructing what exactly I need. For a floating number, I need to check whether there is a positive sign or a negative sign or nothing. Well, how about this? If I copy that and if I paste it here, and instead of 0 and 9, I say you have the option, optional is a question mark, you have the option of putting plus or minus. Are you going to give me a true? Yeah, it's optional. It's okay. If there is no plus or minus there, it says you told me it's optional. If I put a plus sign there, it's still true. But I'm not looking for any letters. I'm looking for numbers. So optional plus or negative. After optional plus or minus, I want to make sure there are numbers between 0 and 9. If I run this, I'll get a false because I've got letters here. How about I put 9 here? It says, okay, I'm happy because you said an optional plus or negative. There's a plus there. And after that, you've asked me to check if there are numbers. Yep, I can see them. There's a number there. So it's a true. But remember, am I making the number optional here or am I making it 0 or more? I think I should use a star here because as an example, what I would probably be getting would be 0.3 or just 0.3. So if I make this 0.3, I will get a true. Or if I simply get rid of that, I will still get a true. So I'll make it a star because star means 0 or more. I've made it so far, but remember, I haven't really considered this floating point in my regex. I need to teach the machine how to find that floating point symbol, if you like. For me to be able to find the floating point symbol, that dot there, I need a backslash and dot. So now it says, hey, I have looked at here, I have seen that dot there because this one is to match there. Once I've figured that out, I think it's all easy from here now. After that dot figure, all I need to do is to check again for numbers. I will say, I want you to find anything between 0 and 9. Should I use a plus, a asterisk, or a star, or a question mark? Well, in math, I don't think you can have this. You need to have a number or so many different numbers. You can't leave it like that. So if I use a question mark says optional. It is not optional. I must have it. Should I use a star? No. A star still says 0 or more. I can't use a star. I must have something. So I need to use the plus sign, means 1 or more. If I run this now, you will see that, yep, it says true. I'm happy with this. If I make that 111.3, it says true. If I make it a positive 111.3, still true. If I make this negative, still true. But if I make this like that, just that very odd figure, it will say false. That doesn't work. So I think this is exactly what I wanted. But just to recap, this first part was for the positive or negative. As you can see here, it could be positive. This second part is for the first figure. This third part is for that floating point symbol. And the last part is for the mandatory figure at the end. All right, I think I have my pattern and I can go ahead and solve this problem right now. All I need to do is to accept the number of test cases from the user. I'll use an input function. If you haven't seen my video on input function, the link is up the top right. I know t is a number. I'll have to convert it to a number. Then I will write a for loop that goes as many times as t, and it will perform this check. Tells the user, give me your input. Well, I will use an input function, and I'll use the strip function to make sure there are not any spaces before and after the input the user gives me. Once I do that, I have got my pattern, which I will copy from here. Copy that pattern. I'm just cleaning up my code as I go down. And all I need now is to check the Boolean value, because I want to see true and false, of the rematch of the pattern and the S that the user gives me. I will make this nicer later, but for now, let me delete that. All right, now that I've cleaned my screen, I just need to remind you that you need to start with a hat sign and you need to close with a $sign. If you don't do that, you might hit a number of problems. So I just added a hat and a $sign to the end. Let's run this. We've got 4 test cases. Number 1 is this one, paste here, run. That's a false, as expected. Next one is -1.00, run that, that's a true, as you can see, plus 4.54, that's a true, and some random stuff will also be a false. So as I said, I'll have to do a bit of change here because I don't want to enter and get the result. I want to enter all the entries and to get the results all together. What I can do then, I need to make an empty list. I'll call my list response, or maybe responses. And what I will do, instead of printing this, I will append the response to my empty list, right? It will capture all the values of true and false in that container, if you like. And once done, I can go ahead and say for a placeholder in the range of t, the same length of the responses list, I want you to print the response 4.0 capital O0 and -1.00, positive 4.54, and some random stuff. Now you can see that I got false, true, true, false, which is exactly what I was expecting to see. All I need to do right now is copy this code, and don't forget to import the re function, not the read function, the re only, and paste that code here. Let me extend this, move my face to the other side, and run the code. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Yep, the first test case was correct, and I will submit the code. It was successful, everything went well. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends that are struggling with Regex.